What's up, Jets fans? Welcome to the latest edition of Jets Latest, where you get the latest on the Jets, 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 Jets. I'm your host, spitting statistician Dane Martinez, and today we have to talk about the Jets getting a win at home against the Cleveland Browns, 27-20. It is their second win of the season. It is their second win in a row. And all you Jets Latest folks that have been day one regulars know that a lot of the stuff we saw on Sunday is exactly what we have been talking about here on Jets Latest. That's why you got to subscribe to Jets Latest, become a Jets Latest insider, click on that join button. You can get exclusive content and everything you need for the green and white for 2025, and quite frankly, in this rebuild with Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn and beyond. But let's get it started with what had to be the best phase of the Jets team. It wasn't their offense, their defense played well, but it was truly the special teams for the Jets, and specifically in the return game, that won them the game against Cleveland on Sunday. The Jets had a 99-yard kickoff return by Keeney Nwanwu and a 74-yard punt return by Isaiah Williams. They did that both in the first quarter. Their offense was lifeless. They were down in the game, and then boom, boom, they took a 14-7 lead. It is the first time in Jets history they have had a punt return and a kickoff return for a touchdown in the same game. It is the first time in about almost 20 years in the NFL that a team has had a punt return and a kickoff return in the first quarter. It hasn't happened in the NFL since 2007. And here's the deal. We have been talking about the added importance of the kickoff return on Jets Latest for a long time, since the summer. I talked about how the rule changes were going to change this up. That's why I thought when we got Keeney in the offseason, it was huge. I talked about the added importance. Keeney Nwanwu entered this game leading the NFL in kickoff returns with 35 yards of return week in and week out on Jets Latest because he has been injured. He's missed 5 games due to injury, but I've said this has been a big deal for the Jets. This is part of really a weapon for the Jets, and did he show it himself? And listen to what he had to say, that the Jets special teams can win games. He goes, we can win the game on special teams. We don't just want to be steady. We don't just want to be here so we don't lose. Let's win the game on teams. And they certainly have kind of been able to do that. Keeney entered the game leading the league in kickoff returns. The Jets entered the game 4th in kickoff returns. Isaiah Williams entered the game top 10 in punt returns, and he got a punt return for a touchdown. It completely changed this entire game for the Jets. And think about it. Keeney's been hurt for a lot of the year. If Xavier Gibson isn't out there fumbling the kickoff return against the Pittsburgh Steelers, what would be the difference? Our special teams have been so special, not even the return game. We're going to talk a little bit later on in the week what Austin McNamara did in this game and throughout the season, what Nick Folk has done in this game and throughout the season. The Jets special teams are truly special. And here's the deal. They need to be, because quite frankly, on offense, it looked offensive again. Justin Fields was once again futile in this game against the Browns. I mean, into the third quarter in this game, the Jets had 1 first down. The Jets had negative net passing yards again in the first half into the third quarter, and yet they were winning because of the special teams kick returns. Justin Fields finished only 6 of 11 for only 54 yards, and he threw his first interception of the season. And quite frankly, it was a bad one, because on the first play when Cleveland had the ball, they had like their only good play of the entire game, hitting, I think it was Jerry Jeudy on a 22-yard touchdown. That was like one of the only real plays the Jets defense gave up all game right after the sudden change on the Fields interception. And Fields, he couldn't throw the ball downfield at all. I mean, wide receivers, 2 catches for a combined 7 yards. I think that was Isaiah Williams and like Tyler Johnson. 2 completions to tight ends, 1 for 4 yards. That's paltry. 1 to Ruckert, 1 to Mason Taylor. And then only 2 completions to running backs. It was saved by Breece Hall taking a screen pass for about 41 yards for touchdowns. The Jets had 127 yards rushing and only 47 net yards passing. And Garrett Wilson, who made his return, didn't even catch a pass and exited again in with that knee injury once again. I mean, it was bad on offense. It was bad for Justin Fields. He saved himself with a couple of scrambles, but it did not look good. Coming off the field at halftime, Aaron Glenn even said it was like special teams making plays, defense making plays, but we have to move the ball on offense. They again had negative net passing yards going into the third quarter. And, there's been all this talk about who's going to be the wide receiver two. Should they have drafted one last year? Will these trades of A.D. Mitchell or Mechie, oh, it's not good enough to have Josh Reynolds. Oh, it's not good enough to have Alan Lazard or Tyler Johnson. Let me tell you something. It doesn't matter who the number two wide receiver is if Justin Fields is only going to throw 2 completions to wide receivers in the entire game. This is what is going to reinvigorate that starting quarterback controversy, because we are at the point of the year where the Jets need to evaluate what they have. How are they going to evaluate John Mechie, A.D. Mitchell, Arian Smith, if they don't have competent quarterback play that can give their wide receivers a chance? I think this performance, again, from Justin Fields, that was bad. Negative net passing yards, only 54 yards on the entire game, only 6 completions in the entire game. This one, your run game is doing just fine. Again, Breece Hall, another 80-plus yards. The run game, 127 yards. This is going to, once again, bring up that question of who's going to start for the New York Jets, and I think it's a real question again, because you have to evaluate everybody else. The time to evaluate Justin Fields is maybe over. The time to evaluate guys specifically like Mason Taylor or A.D. Mitchell and John Mechie to see what they can do has to be done with competent quarterback play. All this week, we are probably going to hear about the who is starting for the Jets at quarterback again, because Justin Fields was once again futile. Only 54 yards, only 6 completions, only 2 of them to wide receivers, and he was sacked a few times again. I will say this. Special teams played good. Offense, meh, not so good. The defense, however, did play well. You may not think so after seeing that the Browns scored 20 points, but the Jets sacked Dillon Gabriel 6 times. Will McDonald had a day. Will McDonald had 4 sacks. He had 8 pressures and over 21% pressure rate. Hit the quarterback 5 times. Had 4 tackles for a loss. He's now up to 7 sacks on the year, looking to be double digits again. Would be the first back-to-back years of double-digit sacks, I think, since Gastineau. So Will McDonald had a great day, and Aaron Glenn talked about him after the game. He said, he's very relentless. I have a lot of belief in that player. To get 4 sacks in a game, that is a huge deal. Apparently, teams were calling for Will McDonald at the trade deadline. He was not moved. Jermaine Johnson, not moved. You could see what this Jets regime was prioritizing, and their bookend edge rushers certainly are part of that. Jermaine Johnson had a sack. The Jets totaled 6 sacks of Dillon Gabriel in this game. And also, listen, the pass defense was fine too. They only allowed 120 net passing yards against Cleveland. The secondary obviously doesn't have sauce, right? It was Brandon Stevens. It was A.Z. Thomas until Thomas left with going into concussion protocol. And Brandon Stevens did get called for a penalty on a crucial 3rd down. But they only allowed 89 receiving yards to Browns wide receivers. Okay, like I said before, they had that one drive for a touchdown. That was one play after the Fields interception. The other one that they had after Austin McNamara pins them on the 5-yard line, that was the one drive they had, and it was aided by a lot of penalties. Okay, 34 of the yards on that drive were penalty yards on 3rd down, one by Stevens and one by Sauce. So I think the defense actually played pretty well, got to Gabriel, and didn't look like it suffered in the back end. But the moral of the story is another victory for the Jets. 27-20, they now win 2 in a row. I do think, though, we are going to have the conversation all week long about Justin Fields. And we know he's not the long-term guy. We know Tyrod is not the long-term guy. But in this rebuilding process, what I actually think is going to be the trump card in all this is we have to have a real evaluation of the rest of the talent. We have to have a real evaluation of John Mechie, of A.D. Mitchell, of Arian Smith, Mason Taylor, Tyler Johnson, to see what they can do. And we can't do that without competent quarterback play that's processing, making the reads, and actually getting the ball out, that's completing more than 6 passes in a game. We didn't have a pass go for more than 4 yards outside of the Breece Hall screen pass. And by the way, we've been talking about screen passes here on Jets Latest. So they tried to do some of the same things, but Justin Fields is holding the ball still and not actually even targeting the wide receivers. Garrett Wilson didn't even catch a pass. So what does it matter who the wide receiver 2 is in this one? But that'll do it for this episode of Jets Latest. Listen, the Jets do get a victory, but there are still plenty of questions we're going to have to be discussing here, especially around the quarterback situation throughout this week. Let's see what some of you Jets latest day 1 regulars have to say. Turney Sturgis says, Glenn has been building this program one step at a time. I completely agree. And, the trades were a big deal, but you could see some of the inspired football that was going on. Quincy Williams, after losing his starting job, played inspired good football. Will McDonald played very good football. Breece Hall played very good football. You saw this out of some of these guys that we have been talking about recently, and I think that was interesting, specifically Quincy Williams and Breece Hall got out there, had big time efforts. Ron P 5022 says, "Hope we lose. We need Mendoza or Simpson in the draft. No need for meaningless wins." Some fans are in that mode already, right? Tank, get the highest pick. Simpson and Mendoza would be kind of the top two quarterbacks on the board. We will talk about that throughout the week as well. But I continue to think that in the long arc of time here with the rebuild, they're going to have multiple draft assets no matter what anyway. They're going to be able to manage and leverage and trade if they need to. If they identify a quarterback they want, they're going to be able to go up and get them. They're going to wind up with a top 10 pick even if they win 3 or 4 more games this season, right? I think for the mentality of this team, for the culture of this team, for the building character and togetherness of this team, getting a couple of wins here is a better idea than just straight tanking for the rest of the season. And, it's not like they're going to win these games anyway. We'll see. Tyrod Taylor, for example, may get them more wins, but in the long view, it could be better to see what we have in our team, and not only on offense with some of these young wide receivers, but on defense also. You can't put them in bad situations like we did after the Fields interception. And then G Davis 2K2 says, they're not drafting a quarterback in the draft. He's going to build around Fields the same way that they built around Goff in Detroit. He's going to get the best out of all these players, and then we'll see the fruit bloom by the end of the season. I think that's an interesting take. I think that, the Jets have a multitude of cap space and draft assets. And I don't know if they're immediately going to put the quarterback. They might spend some of the money. They might spend some of the draft picks on just the best kind of roster, the best kind of talent, and then get the quarterback later when this team is more fully formed, when this roster looks a little bit more like we want. But the defense looked all right. The special teams looked really good. The run game looked really good. It is another game where we have to see what we can do to improve the quarterback situation and the passing offense, but we do it in a 27-20 victory, our second of the season against the Cleveland Browns. We're going to be here talking about it all week. It is a short week for the Jets as they have Thursday night football against the red-hot New England Patriots on deck. And remember, you can always hear from me, Spittin' Statistician Dane Martinez, on social media at Spittin' Speeds, on the FTN Fantasy Show, at SiriusXM, trying to always help you out becoming better fantasy players, sports better. But if you are here for the JETS, Jets, we got another victory. That's the second of the season against Cleveland. We will continue to talk about it all week, so keep it locked here. Thank you for subscribing to the channel, watching these videos, liking these videos. Tell a Jets fan friend to tell a Jets fan friend. We'll see if we can continue with a huge divisional matchup against New England on Thursday, but I will be here talking about it all week leading up to that one. For this episode of Jets Latest, we out of here. Peace.